Hello everyone, this time we have an honored guest who has come here to help us understand Ezekiel a little better. Say hi to Bruno. Hi Bruno. Alright, now let's get back to brass tacks. Okay? Alright, so let's finish Ezekiel. Alright, another phase was reached when we were twice attacked and lost our way. A section claimed its liberty. To leave the group, I tried to pray. Our leader said he smelled the sea. Alright. So another phase was reached when we were attacked twice. Now, why does Ezekiel use such an expression? That another phase came when we were attacked twice. Now, this double attack can be interpreted in two ways. The two times that the British tried to divide us. Once it was stopped by Rabindranath, the Bongo Bongo Andolan, or the separation of Bengal, which was attempted by the British, was the first one, and the second one was obviously 1947. But it can be interpreted in another way as well, which is that in 1947 they tried to attack us twice. Once attack our geographical location or geographical locale, and secondly attack the secular film or the secular thread of our country. So another phase was reached when we were twice attacked and lost our way. I think the rest you can understand, because being an Indian, we know what the political problems engendered from these issues. A section claimed its liberty, as I was talking about Jinnah in the earlier video. To leave the group, I tried to pray. So, prayer against the separation, prayer against the estrangement, prayer against partition. You see how Ezekiel pitches the spiritual against the political. It's another paradigm which makes us rethink Ezekiel's position in the history of Indian politics. Our leaders said he smelt the sea. This is probably a reference to the Dandi March, where Gandhi was trying to make salt out of seawater when the British when the British raised the excise on salt, when the British raised the taxes on salt. So I think this is a reference to that Dandi March, because otherwise our leaders said he smelt the sea. This is otherwise not justifiable by me in any way. I think there might be some references that you can find, but I think this one. So in the comment section, please write whether I am right or wrong, whether what you think, because you see, any teaching, I am not trying to teach you, I am trying to discuss with you the poem as I have understood it. Now, any understanding is subject to interpretation, and interpretations, no matter how much we talk about them, these are subjective. I will always bring my ideological apparatus to a poem and try to interpret it in that light. And I'll always try to bring forth all the political, philosophical, and spiritual, psychoanalytical understandings that I have to the interpretation of a poem. Now, that interpretation might not be the only one. There might be other interpretations, but each interpretation is as valid as the other, as long as the entire text supports it. This is something that you might ponder. Now, we noticed nothing as we went, a straggling crowd of little hope, ignoring what the thunder meant, deprived of common needs like soap. Now we noticed nothing as we went. So talks about the pilgrimage, talks about the march. A straggling crowd of little hope. So when the political historical situation was such, the crowd lost all forms of hope. So a straggling crowd of little hope. Ignoring what the thunder meant. Now this is a reference directly to T.S. Eliot's Wasteland, the Wasteland, section 5, which is entitled What the Thunder Said. Now in this section, Eliot was severely influenced by the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, in which Prajapati Brahman calls forth the Devas, the Asuras and the Manushyas, that is the humans, that is the gods, demons and humans, and he tells them Da, each, Da. And then he asks, what have you understood? So one says, I have understood Datta. The other says, I have understood Dayadvam. The third says, I have understood Damayata. Datta means to give. Dayadvam means to be compassionate. And Damayata means to kind of a sacrifice of the self, that is a kind of what should I say, a kind of self control which is exercised on the self. So over here he says, ignoring what the thunder meant. Now look at my arm, please. If Chaucer is here, Eliot is here on my wrist, and Ezekiel is somewhere over here, then Ezekiel's duty, as my guru used to show me, then Ezekiel's duty would be to stay here but bring Chaucer over here, bring Eliot over here. So Ezekiel must act as a confluence between Chaucer and Eliot. He must be the link for Chaucer and Eliot, so that when a poet of posterity who's standing over here, so when he reads Ezekiel, he can find the flavor of Chaucer and he can find the flavor of Eliot in Ezekiel as well. So Ezekiel has to be a confluence for all future generations. Now look, ignoring what the thunder meant. So Eliot was talking about what the thunder said. Ezekiel has to fathom what the thunder meant. Now in this regard, I would like to mention a text by Harold Bloom. The name of the text was The Anxiety of Influence. There, Harold Bloom talks about how a poet feels an anxiety because of all the work that has been done before him or her. And the poet has to negotiate his space with his predecessors to say something which would be worthy of being considered anew. Alright, because say, starting from the earliest poets to the poets of present day, the human themes have remained the same: love, sadness, happiness, betrayal, fighting, justice, injustice, good, bad, light, dark. The themes have remained the same. It is only the treatments which have changed. Because you see, the subject matter of literature has remained the same, more or less. Say, it changed a bit when we entered into the technological era. Now, if you look at the science fiction and if you look at the post-humanist work that is being done today, that's a very different issue. But otherwise, what happens is that basically the subject matter of literature has remained the same. So only the forms have developed, the forms have evolved. That is how to look at it. Say, the way Homer was looking at war, Owen was not looking at war in that same manner. That changed their attitude, that changed their poetry, nothing else. They were both talking about war. Now, so ignoring what the thunder meant, so what Eliot did was he said what the thunder said. But it is Ezekiel's duty to interpret what the thunder meant. The thunder is like an internal voice, the voice within all of us, which tells us, which gives us the call to test ourselves. Deprived of common needs like the soap. Now, I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that soap, Ezekiel had a private experience, a personal experience regarding something, soap and oils in London. I don't remember that, and I would not go into that because we are not here to read Ezekiel's biography. We are here to read Ezekiel's poetry. But look, deprived of common needs like soap. Soap is basically something with which we cleanse our body, with which we purify our body. So when Ezekiel says that deprived of common needs like soap, so he talks about how the harshness of the pilgrimage, how the negative impulses of the pilgrimage, what started as a pilgrimage, are actually getting to the people, and how they lack an emotional, spiritual, physical cleanser over here. A cleansing agent, that is. Some were broken, some merely bent. So you see, all of us are facing hardships in life, and especially when we are now quarantined due to corona, all of us have to face a lot. Now, different people are reacting to it differently. Some are broken, some are bent, but all of us are suffering. At least we can say we are bored right now. So, what I would tell you, although in a very, this is not something of the text, but then what can be a greater text than life itself? So, I would tell you that have faith, believe in yourself, we shall overcome, don't worry. So, in any case, look, now we can relate to this because we are also facing a lot of hardships, but the same amount of hardships have different reactions from different human beings. So, some were broken, some merely bent. When finally we reached the place, we hardly knew why we were there. The trip had darkened every face. So, what Ezekiel is trying to ask whether the trip was worth the effort. You will see, life brings us in front of such experiences where we too shall question whether the trip was worth it. But at the end, it is the belief on the self which makes a trip worthy. So, look, when finally we reached the place, that is when finally we got the independence, we hardly knew why we were there because we had lost so much. So, in order to win something, you have to lose something. If you are thinking about a prize, you have to be willing to pay the price. And this discrepancy between the price sought after and the price to be paid has always made poets, thinkers ponder. For instance, let's take the example of Macbeth. He wants the prize but is too wary to pay the price. So you see, you know what Ezekiel is talking about. The trip had darkened every face. Our deeds were neither great nor rare. You see, something begins, even a life begins with a lot of hope, a lot of expectations. But what does not matter is how it began. What matters is how it ends. So, our deeds were neither great nor rare. Many countries have done this. Many countries have faced equal problems or even greater ones. Home is where we have to gather grace. But at the end of the day, every poem arrives at a conclusion. And the conclusion is an arrival at the self. So, home is where we have to gather the grace. Now, home can be a physical place, a physical space. Home can be a psychological space. It can be the German concept of Heimlich, which roughly means homely. So, home is where we have to gather grace. So, home can be your country, home can be your mind, home can be a person, because some people feel like home. But it is at home, at at the basic level, at the grassroots level, where we have to gather the grace, where we have to be graceful, where we have to be dignified, where we have to gather some dignity. Because you see, in the capitalist era in which we live, we have forgotten the value of dignity, of human dignity. And whenever we see that somebody is showing an act of dignity, we cannot but celebrate that person. For instance, Dr. Kalam. He was a man of dignity, he was a man of grace. And you might agree with his notions, you might disagree with his notions, but none can say that he was not a dignified man, he was not a great man, he was not a graceful man. So you see, home is where we have to gather grace. And in this regard, there is a 3-minute video by Dr. Kalam where he talks about dignity and grace. It's also available on YouTube. Please listen to it. You will learn a lot about life itself. So thank you. That is all I wanted to say. If you have any questions, suggestions, please write it in the comment section. And if there are other texts that you want me to do, then if there are other texts that you want me to talk about, then I would try to oblige. So thank you everyone. This is the last lecture on enterprise, and I hope you all found these lectures a little bit helpful. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all, because there must be a lot of things that you can study on such a great poem, but I tried to give you an understanding which I have, because Indian poetry or Indian writing is not my forte. However, I tried my level best. So if you have any comments, any suggestions, any questions, please let me know. Thank you. This is Debarghya Ganguli. Goodbye.